that's like, to me, almost the opposite in every way of if I hopefully go into surgery someday, that I want it to not be about me whatsoever. What's up, you guys? Rex here. And here we are again, driving back from Anatomy Lab on a Friday. Just finished my week, and finishing it with Anatomy Lab, always a fun time. Yeah, Anatomy Lab is like the highlight of my week. Pretty much every week, I guess, except for last Wednesday. Kind of was a bad day in Anatomy Lab. But on a good day in Anatomy Lab, that's a real good day to be alive. Good day to be a med student. Really exciting, really privileged. So I thought I'd talk a little bit more about sort of my thoughts on cadaveric dissection and sort of reflecting on it a little more, especially now that on Monday we sort of had a session during lunch that was sort of meant to be a period of time for us to reflect on cadavers and allow people who might be having a lot of emotions brought up with it, think about it. And the one professor who is my favorite professor so far, he is absolutely awesome, gave a presentation on it that was like, I can't do it even justice, like summarizing it, because he had like all kinds of paintings he was talking about. He quoted like 4 different poems. And so he was really talking about the sort of fascination but also beauty that there is in the human body, and the beauty in cadaveric dissection, and that it has captured artists since the 1600s, and it's a very interesting thing. And then also talking about some of the darker history, and that not long ago, I guess it was a practice that they would, where it was illegal to grave rob in the United States, but they would sort of look the other way if they were robbing from black graves. And so there's a couple anonymous black men that were sort of asked and tasked with going into black communities shortly after the Civil War and sort of harvest bodies from the bodies of black slaves that had died, which is obviously an absolutely horrible thing that went down, and that was the norm at many institutions, particularly in this area in the South. And so that was an interesting thing to talk about. But really the most interesting thing to me was they sort of brought up some of the different practices people have around naming cadavers, not naming cadavers, and they sort of didn't take a stance as far as like there's a right way to do it or a wrong way to do it. One of the professors talked about how when she went through as a student and did her cadaveric dissection, and she had a group of all fellow female students, and they were dissecting a female cadaver, that they named the cadaver and sort of even like built up a whole story for the cadaver, and sort of built a family for it and all this stuff, which I think is an interesting strategy, that they very much tried to humanize it. And then that was sort of shattered for them in an interesting way, where they later on in the dissection came to figure out that it was likely that this person never was able to have children and never did have children. So that sort of shattered the view that they had previously of their cadaver. And so that's an interesting strategy. There was another student that talked about, even though they had a female cadaver, that they always only referred to it as a they in order to not judge what its pronouns might have been, which I think is another interesting scenario, especially generationally. I think there's more people of the age that would be donating their bodies at this point, that they would probably be more offended at being called a they than potentially being misgendered as a she. So that was an interesting thing to me, but they were doing that because they thought that was the most respectful thing. But the really most interesting thing was they sort of talked about wondering if that somehow through our experience of dissection we might learn a deeper compassion to have with our patients. And I sort of thought that was interesting, that it's almost, I have almost the opposite mindset going into a cadaveric dissection as I hope I will one day have as a surgeon, in that when I am going to a cadaveric dissection, I prefer to refer to my donor as the donor, and that is such a one-sided relationship of where I am benefiting immensely from my donor, and my donor is getting absolutely nothing out of this. And this is, I guess, one of the few examples where I can literally say nothing. My donor is no longer alive in this world and has no idea how much I'm being benefited from it or what my experience is like. And so it's just like the most selfless thing ever to do would be to donate your body like that. And so I have just this infinite respect for my donor. But so now I'm going into it where I am going in with a humility of receiving a gift. And I'm also going in with sort of a self-centeredness of I am going in to learn, that it's about me and my learning and my group's learning. And I'm not doing this to benefit my donor beyond respecting their memory and honoring the gift that they gave and honoring their last wishes that I would learn from them, or that someone would learn and benefit from their body after they died. And so that's like, to me, almost the opposite in every way of if I hopefully go into surgery someday, that I want it to not be about me whatsoever. It should be only about the other person, and it should be a one-sided relationship in the opposite direction, that I would hope that the person being operated on is receiving all of the benefit, and me as the surgeon one day is not in it to get any personal gain out of the operation. And so it almost is I think it's good that I'm thinking about this, that they had raised the question that it would maybe make us more compassionate, that I think that I would hope that it generally makes you more compassionate and that you're thinking about your patients, but it could lead to the opposite effect of you go into a medical procedure and you're used to cadaveric dissection, that's all you do, and you're used to it being a self-centered thing and it's about you, and treating it as this is an experience for me to learn. And while learning is a huge part of medicine and you continue to learn throughout your career, I hope that no one ever goes into a surgery with the primary goal of I'm going to learn from this. I hope that the primary goal is that I am going to help heal or lessen the pain or lessen the suffering or improve the life of this other human being in any way I can, and this is not about my personal gain, even if I might benefit from it through learning or just the satisfaction of sharing and this opportunity to heal someone else. So I thought that was a really, really interesting thing, and so I wanted to take this moment to reflect on that a little more to finish out my week here, and maybe some of you find those thoughts interesting. And so that's a big part of this channel, is that I want to be more reflective throughout my experience of becoming a doctor. And so if you're interested in hearing more of my reflections, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to join me along this fun ride. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'd love to hear about them. I'll read and respond to any comment down below. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. And until next time, don't be ordinary, go be great.